Awesome, awesome. Well, really excited to be here. My name is Spencer Cavan. I'm from the University of Louisville, and so many of us are at different stages. So some of us are thinking about grad school. Some of us are maybe getting close to being on the job market. And so hopefully I can give you some kind of little reminders on what it means to be engaged in the workforce as you're kind of considering what that next step is for you. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of the research that I've conducted thus far, which connects some exercise science and really sport business. So my background is in really leadership. Okay, so some of the stuff that I'm doing is not necessarily traditional sport administration or sport business, so we're kind of finding that connection here today. You'll see a lot of basketball courts because I am situating this into a study that I did where we explored perceptions of engagement among physical activity at work. Okay, so right now I got a little starter here. I need some audience engagement. I got a number on the screen. I got 80,000. What do we think this is? So usually I'm in there with you. I'm not used to being on the stage here, so we'll have to, I can see you though, so what do you think 80,000 hours is? I'm going to talk to you. 80,000 is what? 80,000 is getting bigger. 80,000, what do you think? You look like you, no, you're right there. Yeah, sure. Hours. Sitting on the computer, okay, what do you think? Yeah, you. Usually the people that turn around are the one I'm pointing at. A salary? Salary, $80,000? Maybe, that'd be good. You need that in New York. 80,000 hours is 80,000 hours that you're going to work over your career. It's a lot of time, right? 80,000 hours or 40 years you're going to be spent working. So hopefully, like our keynote speaker, when I talked to him before this, you're going to be able to say, I love my job and I enjoy what I'm doing. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about engagement. And some other things we want to consider based on our background is how can we integrate physical activity and exercise into our work? Because you all know the benefits. You're the exercise scientists. Okay? You're the ones that are studying medicine. You know how important it is for us to be active, right? Well, what do we know about this activity? What we know is a lot of people are not active. True or false? A lot of people struggle to be active, right? 1.4 billion. This is one citation. We have numbers that go up to 1.8 billion individuals don't get enough physical activity to protect their health, right? And then when we see physical activity integrated in workplace settings, what do we find? Well, we see that it helps us with a lot of things. It helps us with enhanced teamwork and trust and performance. And for you all, what? Stress, right? We get pretty stressed out. Well, this allows us to mitigate some of that stress, being active. Okay, well, why aren't we doing it, Spencer? Why aren't we doing it? Well, sometimes we face certain constraints. And so some of the research that I was exploring, one focuses on the benefits when we do negotiate these constraints, but the second part is, what are some of these challenges? What are some of these barriers? Which one jumps out to us? Time, right? Yo, there we go, right? Time. We don't have enough time. And so I'm advocating, talk about what Chad was talking about, just finding your little space. What I'm advocating for is how we can integrate this into our workplace. Because that's going to help us with our time. Because we're already spending 80,000 hours at work anyway. We're there for 40 years of our lives, so why can't we repurpose some of this time to be active? Some other things that we experience are maybe management support. So not everyone wants to be active, right? Not everyone allows their employees to be active at work. Facilities. I'm a basketball guy. Not very many facilities, not very many jobs have basketball courts there, so it makes it difficult for us to play. And then, lastly, you mentioned that time. Okay, so we're going to have people from all over. Some people are still, in school. Some people are working. Just show of hands, who is active in some way, shape, or form at their work? Okay, so we got some decent numbers. And I want you to kind of just think. I'm going to do these super quick. 10, 15, 20 seconds, I'll leave this question up. But I want you to kind of do some of the work for me. I'm lazy. Okay, you're going to do some of this work for me. You're going to form some of these connections so I don't have to later. I want you to think about what that experience would feel like. And if you have not been able to be active, just think about your experiences through sport, physical activity, etc., in workplace settings or non-workplace settings, and how do you feel? So take 10, I got a little counter here, take like 10 seconds, think on that. The next thing I want you to think about is maybe how does that bring out different sides of who you are when you're active? So I play basketball. If you see me here giving a speech, what is different about me here up on stage versus me on the basketball court? I want you to think on that. Take, again, 10 seconds. And then the last thing I want you to think about is, how does this help or hinder you? How does this help or hinder you do that job that you're required to do? Whether that is writing papers, whether that is as a clinical individual, whether that is just day-to-day operations. How does that help you? And then give me like 5 seconds on the why. All right, so if we were in a classroom setting here, I would get you guys to partner up, have little conversations, come back to me, talk, but I'm going to keep it moving. What I want to highlight is maybe how are some people being active? So yell out really quickly, what are some people doing? Bike riding. To work? Who said that? To work, from work? Or for work? You bike, yeah? I used to. Okay, amazing. What else? Pilates. At work? Before work, after work? Before, I love it. Okay, what else? Swimming, running, lifting. Okay, awesome. So I kind of have some categories. You guys are awesome, right? So maybe people are playing some form of sport or doing some recreation at their workplace, right? So I have the little buckets here. Maybe some people are repurposing their time. So I do this a lot. If I'm meeting with individuals, I say, hey, can we go for a little walk together, right? So maybe you're trying to stay active. Maybe you're do a manual labor job. So your job actually incorporates physical activity. And then maybe you're traveling. Maybe you're doing something called active travel to and from work. So that's kind of how you're getting some of that activity in. Okay? Second part is, why aren't we doing these things? What are some of these challenges? What's getting in the way? And so I'm going to present some information for you all just so you can think about this. And so I explore something called this leisure constraints theory. And what this theory means, to make it English, I like making things in English, is people face different types of constraints. People face intrapersonal constraints or internal constraints. So if you want to play basketball with me or you want to swim with Gustavo up there, you might say, I'm not as good at swimming as Gustavo is. So internally, inside my head, I say, I can't go and swim with him. Or maybe I'm having a rough day and I lack the motivation to go do this. These are all things internally. Okay, so how do we try to figure out some of these internal constraints that people are facing? Second thing is intrapersonally. So maybe you say, hey, Spencer doesn't seem that bad. I want to go play basketball with him later. But he's busy. He's up here talking. Okay, so you don't have the people, you don't have the personnel in order for you to participate in such activities, such pursuits. Or finally, what we see a lot is people face structural constraints. And this is where there's lack of management support. This is where people don't have the facilities in order for them to engage in such activities. So pickleball's been a craze for the past couple of years. We want to play pickleball. We don't have paddles. We don't have a ball. We don't have a court to play. Okay, so that would be a structural constraint somebody might face. All right. So we're talking about constraints. Where is this getting into engagement? My argument is super simple. Super, super simple. What I'm going to say basically is that if we can integrate sport and physical activity into the workplace, and this might be really important for you all to consider as you're getting on the market, is how you can actually have the time and space and energy to do this. We can enhance productivity metrics, so we can do our jobs better. We are making our employees healthier, because now they'll be able to be active. And then finally, as an employer, we're sending signals to our employees, one, that we care about them, and two, we're able to have different forms of connection with different people through these activities. We go for a swim, we go for a bike ride, we do Pilates, whatever that is. And so this one, I'll give you 30 seconds. I'm talking about employee engagement, okay? Employee engagement. So when I say engagement, we're talking about employee engagement. I want you to talk to the person beside you for 30 seconds. We're super quick. But I want you to tell me, what does engagement look like? What does engagement sound like? What does engagement feel like for employees? Go. give you like 5 seconds here. All right, what do we got? So people are passionate, amazing, and they have goals. Awesome, Gustavo. What else? What else did we talk about? Focus on what they're doing. They're not doing other things. They're focused. Awesome, Rhonda. Thank you. Ooh, sense of belonging. Awesome. Give me one more. These are great. Camaraderie. Amazing. Okay, so here we go. You guys are going to do this lecture for me. It makes it really easy for me, right? So what is engagement? We'll leave here at least knowing what engagement is. So we know already how people struggle to be active at work. And when we're on the job market, we want to consider how can we get some of that activity in, because we're going to be working for 8,000 hours. We're going to be working for 40 years. 2, what's employee engagement? And so what engagement is, it's kind of funky, but it's all about how we present ourselves at work. And that presentation is between the alignment of who we really are, so who Spencer is at home, who Spencer is when he plays basketball, who Spencer is with his friends, and how he shows up at work, okay? And if there's more alignment, right, there's more alignment between who Spencer is with his friends, personal relationships, and how he shows up at work, he's more likely going to be engaged. If there's a less alignment, what happens is people detach from their roles. They separate themselves from their work, then they stop caring. So what do we need in order to be engaged? What are some things that we should be considering and some things that we should be thinking about? Before we get there, let's say, like, why is it important to be engaged? We talked about these productivity metrics, okay? So engaged employees are more productive than their disengaged counterparts. They're also more profitable at the individual and organizational level. So 40% higher profits than folks that are not engaged. So this is big business as well. I'm coming from a business school, all right? And then lastly, they stay at their work longer. So they're not going to just look for new jobs. We're going to keep them. We're going to retain our employees. We don't have to keep hiring new people, retraining new people, wasting resources. So we're going to be more efficient. All right? Cool. Well, what do they need? What they need is they need to have meaning. They need to have purpose. They need to feel valued. And we call this the psychological conditions for engagement to occur. And there's 3 things. The first one is psychological meaningfulness. We keep it super simple. People need to feel like their work matters. People need to feel valued in their workplace. Second thing, my friend here in the frontish row for me, we need to feel a sense of belonging. We need to have something called psychological safety. And what psychological safety means is just like all you did for me, thank you for helping me, you were able to speak your mind without fear of repercussion. So you could see I'm not a scary person who's going to yell at you. This is a safe space for us to just share information and talk about things, okay? If folks start feeling like that's not the case in their workplace, they're going to stop speaking up. We don't want that. And then finally, this is the one that's always confusing when I talk about it. We have something called psychological availability. And this doesn't mean that we're actually just at work, but it kind of does. It means that we're present, right? It means that we have a lot of things in our lives that are pulling us in different directions. And in order for us to be focused on the task at hand, our employer needs to take care of some things for us, okay? Because, for example, I use this example all the time. If our employer is not paying us enough money for us to just do one job, and we got to do 10 different jobs, and we got kids, we got family members that might be sick, and we have to run around all over the place, it makes it really difficult for us to focus on one task at hand, okay? Second thing, as our previous presenter talked about, if you're a researcher, there's some things that you need. You might need a laptop. You might need graduate support. Thank you all, right? You might need a lab. You might need certain resources. If you don't have those resources, it makes it really tough for you to do the work that you are just required to do. Okay, so these are those physical resources and those psychological resources. So when folks have these 3 things, they are able to be more authentically expressive in their place of work. Okay? And so hopefully you can find jobs in the future that allow you to do so. All right, so where was where did the sport come into play? How did I start studying engagement and physical activity at work? And so what happened was, just like Chad was talking about, I started looking into how could we potentially experience engagement by things that are not related to our work? Or I started playing basketball at work, and I started meeting people. and I started feeling better about going to work, and I started feeling better about my job. But playing basketball has nothing to do with being a lecturer at the University of Louisville. Nothing. Or so I thought, right? So I looked and looked and looked and looked, and I found a study in 2013 from the guy that wrote The Theory of Engagement, Bill Kahn, and he said that engagement, all those things we talked about, meaningfulness, safety, availability, those things can be experienced by things that are not related to the work that we're doing. And so I said, oh, that's pretty cool. Maybe we can explore engagement from people being active in their workplace. And so I'm kind of trying to argue that physical activity can be a lever for organizations where we can experience some of these things that we've discussed. So if you're allowed to play basketball at work, or swim at work, or do Pilates at work, or bike at work, you might say, my employer is giving me some autonomy to do my job. They're not standing over my shoulder. They also care about my physical, psychological, and emotional well-being. All right? I'm also able to now meet people in different settings. So maybe I don't work with some individuals on this side of the room. But now all these people like to play basketball, so we meet on the court, and I need to have connection in the future. Boom, I know some new individuals. And lastly, my employer is giving me the space to release some emotional energy. Okay, and so I'm going to talk about those three kind of here as we wrap up our discussion. So if I was a little bit down there, can I ask you, what does engagement mean again? I'll just recap. Engagement is all about authentic expression. So we're saying, how aligned can we be with who we really are and how we show up in our workplace? And what we found through our study was the fact that physical activity at work, sport at work, allowed individuals to be more expressive with who they really were. Because a lot of us get into this field by saying, hey, we were former athletes, or hey, we've always been around sport, exercise, and nutrition. And so now we're able to express some of those components of our identity. All right? Second thing, when we're talking about meaningfulness specifically, right? We are able to, have some autonomy. So we call these things antecedents. Antecedent's a big word. Who knows what that means? Yeah. Yeah, what comes before, right? Thank you, you're on fire. So what's an antecedent to meaningfulness? Autonomy. So people feeling like they have autonomy to do their jobs. And so we noticed that individuals that were active at work express this sense of autonomy. All right? They also are able to say, hey, my employer cares about me. Like, they want me to be able to take some time to take care of myself. And because I'm at work for so long, maybe on my lunch break, a lot of these activities happen on lunch breaks, I am able to repurpose some of that time because many people, you saw that 1.4 billion, 1.8 billion, depends on who you ask, before or after work, they can't get it done. Okay, so we talked about two things. Autonomy, one. Two, fulfillment. And this is kind of interesting because, again, this is beyond one's job. But the individuals that we spoke with, they expressed that participating in such pursuits or such activities actually allowed them to feel more fulfilled in the work that they were doing, even though it had nothing to do with their kind of bottom line, so to speak. All right, what's our second one? Our second one is psychological safety. And when we talk about psychological safety, once again, we're saying like, hey, can I really speak my mind without fear of repercussion? Right? Do people really care about my ideas? So I got right here, fear of self-image, status, or career. And I think the interesting thing that we found from our research was the fact that through these activities, not only did people meet people in new settings, but they actually had strengthened social bonds. And so now they have connections with individuals that they never knew before, all while integrating a subculture of equality. And so this is one of our themes. I want you to think about it like this. You have a boss. I'm going to take the basketball away. We'll do soccer, a global sport, right? Okay. So we do soccer. We got, hierarchies as we all have. So you have maybe an advisor, you have a CEO, you have, a director. Okay, these individuals are not the best soccer players. The graduate students are the best soccer players. So now we're reversing organizational structures on their head. We're actually breaking down hierarchies. Because on the soccer pitch, now we're saying, hey, Dr. Whoever is just an individual. It's just a person. So we have different ways that we can communicate with our colleagues and also our superiors. And so I think that's really exciting for us. Lastly, we have this concept of psychological availability. And again, we could talk ad nauseum for this, but I'll just say it here really quickly. Think about it as your employer providing you with physical resources to do your work, but also psychological resources. And so for an employer, if they give you this space to be active, like I'm not going to educate the educators on the benefits of physical activity, sport, and exercise, right? But if they give you this space, you are able to, have a psychological energy release. So now you're releasing some of that pent-up stress, some of that pent-up excitement, and you're also able to manage your workload, right? Because, hey, if not, I'm going to have to wake up early, I'm going to have to stay late, and maybe that's not even an option for me. And so all of these things are now integrated into the workplace, and we kind of see some of the benefits that I've been describing. So what are some things that I want you to kind of sit on as you're maybe getting on the job market, as you're maybe considering what the next step is for you? Well, the way that we are working is changing. And we know how linked health and work is. So in a post-COVID environment, what happens? Everybody is fleeing from the offices. Everybody is trying to maybe work more in silos or more individually. And I'm thinking, if you can try to integrate some of the amazing stuff that you all are discussing in exercise science, it'll actually allow us to do our work more effectively. It'll actually form some connections between people that are working together. And hopefully, in the new way of work, this will be productive, All right, so my so what, my why this matters. So kind of what are some of these big takeaways that I want to highlight? One, I want to justify the performance improvements through such pursuits. And we have literature that backs this up. Two, we're talking about repurposing time and getting employees back into the office in a post-COVID environment. So having fun at work might be one way that we get people back to the office. Three, this is a very, very strong opportunity for us to manage high levels of workplace stress. Additionally, we have enhanced connection between employees that we know but also don't know. We're able to express ourselves in different ways, in different shapes, in different forms, in different settings, which will all kind of touch down to what culture is. Because really, culture is just what people say, how people think, and what we see. And so if they see people being active, then the culture around the office is that more people are able to do this. Or if they see things in messaging from universities or from jobs that we have these opportunities, now you're sending signals to your employees that you care about them. Okay? The only thing we have to consider is some of the inclusion criteria to ensure that we have pursuits and opportunities for a myriad of individuals so that everybody can do something that they want to do, whether that's walking, whether that's basketball, whether that's swimming, Pilates, biking, etc. So what are some kind of recommendations that I have maybe for you, but also just for where we're going with this line of research? The first thing is that we want to make sure people have awareness. So we want to make sure people know about this. They know the benefits of being active at work, and they know the opportunities for them to engage in such activities. Okay? The second thing, and what I'm kind of building my line of research as a young scholar, is around acceptance. And so these are kind of some maybe challenges in the workplace, specifically we're in New York City, right? We see, the hustle and bustle, we gotta go, 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 go. Do we have time at work, and do we have acceptance from our leaders and our managers to engage in such pursuits? And then finally, action, where individuals are starting to actually implement said programs and start to integrate sport and physical activity into the workplace. So we have about 5-ish minutes or so for questions if anyone has any, but that's what I got for you all today, so thank you.